I saw an amusing thing with puppets. I don't know if that counts.
Was it an episode of MST3K?
It was not. This time we watch Season 8, Episode 6, The Undead.
A movie completely devoid of the undead.
But first, some follow-up.
Yes, indeed. First off, we've gotten some nice feedback lately. Over on our Facebook group, listener Marty shared another take on the episode we did last time, The Thing That Couldn't Die. Or at least on the film, not on the episode. But anyway, Marty says, I've had a weird history with this film. I used to think the episode was one of the dullest of the entire series. It is. Then one day, after probably 6 viewings, spread out over several years, it clicked for me. I've never been much of a fan of the sci-fi era riffs and sketches, but it was the movie itself that finally appealed to me. This is such a sexually charged film made in a Puritan era, much like The Violent Years, Sinister Urge, and Kitten with a Whip. This film is funny to watch now, thinking back on the mores of its time. This was somebody's teenage fantasy, and its subversiveness is so obvious now. Yes, it's very childish and extremely dated, but that's why it's amusing to me seeing people hide their kinks in a cheapo drive-in flick. How naughty. But also, the more I watch it, the more fascinated by the cast I become. They're all so interesting, whether it be Flavia, or the oily beat guy, or any of the others. They're all so strange to me. What a weird time capsule of a film.
Well, that's an interesting read on it.
I could totally see this. Like, it's kind of a boring movie, and you made the point that, like, you're accustomed to bad movies, and this is not that bad. It's not interestingly bad.
No.
But I could totally see getting into a groove of the particular flavor of weirdness that this film quietly offers.
And yet, it's like, I think that you do have to do some digging, which is why it probably took about 6 viewings, as you mentioned, to get into that, just because it's like everything is so kind of by the books, by the numbers, universal production style that, like, all those fun little edges that are there are just so sanded down that it's like, you don't really take them unless you're looking for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a slightly more positive reaction to the Leech Woman than you did. And it was kind of the same thing. There was just something about that movie that just quietly I found appealing. I'm not saying it's brilliant. I'm not saying it's, a great episode or anything like that. Just there was something about it that just lingered in a weird way.
I had that feeling about Revenge of the Creature just because it had that great creature in it.
Yes, well, we know your love of the creature.
He's always knocking stuff over. He's like a cat with a glass of water. I love him.
It's true. Let's see. Did we get any other mail?
Yes. Regarding Frank and Trace's upcoming riff of The Tingler as the Mads, that's going to be on August 18th, and tickets will be available in a link in our show notes. Tim from the Now, or in a few days from now, podcast that's going to be on Megaphonic, Fiasco Family Movie Night, says, I've seen that movie in theaters / groups 3 or 4 times, and it's always a delight during the audience participation section. When it was a Monsterama selection at the Riverside Drive-In, someone from the Snack Shack came out to shush us after we all screamed to defeat the Tingler. We may have been loud, but when Vincent Price tells you to scream for your life, I think you need to be audible in another time zone.
Well, I cannot wait. I've never watched the Tingler. I'm super looking forward to seeing it, and especially seeing it with Trace and Frank, and I'm super curious to see how they react to that, and if the world, if everybody watching around the world can make enough noise to defeat the Tingler at that moment.
Yep, it's going to be like that scene in Network where everyone's yelling out their window.
And Tim's co-host Sean had a lot of good things to say about the Tingler in an episode of the panel show that we have here on Megaphonic, Take Your Pick. We did an episode on horror monsters, and the Tingler was one of Sean's picks, and they talked about it for a bit, and it was really interesting. And anybody who likes a good slice of horror, I think, would have a fun time watching that episode, and watching me, somebody who does not know anything about horror, just react to the giddiness that was going on with you and Sean and everybody else making your picks.
Oh man, not to mention it's like, it's hard not to be totally won over and perhaps in a great deal of suspense over, is this what the Tingler is really about? Is the Tingler really like this? Is such a film real? And yes, I assure you it's real. I've got another thing, just because remember we were talking about the end of Universal, the original end of Universal Pictures and their horror cycle.
I do remember us talking about that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm just curious to find out more about, so this is as much a plea for the listeners as or plea to the listeners. Listeners out there, do you have any good articles or videos about the fall of the Dark Universe? Please send them our way, because I want to watch and or read those. The Dark Universe, from what I understand, Chris, as I imagine you are not quite as in the loop when it came to what they're going to do with Creature from the Black Lagoon these days.
This is the time that they tried to reboot it recently?
Yes, they that's where they had that disastrous mummy movie with Tom Cruise.
I think I've heard you mention this before, yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, I would have been most excited about that because that was a movie where the trailer was released with an unfinished sound mix. And so there's a scene in which Tom Cruise is like freaking out while a helicopter is going down, but you just hear, from one guy. That's pretty great. But no, the Dark Universe was a disaster largely because they handed the reins to Alex Kurtzman, who's been responsible for the worst of Star Trek, whether it's the Star Trek Into Darkness or the recent terrible Picard show. But his idea was essentially that the characters from the Universal movies were going to show up in individual movies, but unite to form a force for good and fight evil. And if that's true, if that was the plan all along, and the Mummy hints towards that, basically Universal was pitching Creature Commandos. Have you ever heard of Creature Commandos?
No? Is it like Cheat Commandos?
It is very similar. Because you can buy all their play sets and toys. Creature Commandos was a comic book series, and in the comics, a Wolfman, a Frankenstein, a Medusa, and a Dracula fight the Nazis.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah. One, that's unlike the generic, hey, let's try to be Marvel and DC, but, you know, with our own properties. I would totally be interested in a Creature Commandos movie. It's still relevant today. I want to see Dracula punch out a Nazi, wouldn't you?
I mean, Creature Commandos looks like it was a DC comic.
I know, it was indeed, but it's still based on the Universal characters, so surely...
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, like, why not do that? But yes, if you have any information on the Dark Universe, info and It's Just a Show. I want to read about the failure and laugh.
Is there anything else that we get to talk about before we talk about this episode?
See any good movies lately?
No.
Well, that's just sad.
Oh, dear. All right. Let's just get this over with. This time we watched Season 8, Episode 6, The Undead. And again, don't worry, there are no undead in this film. Diana is a sex worker, just trying to do her job, when Quintus, the worst character in a movie that includes Satan, Quintus hires her for a few days, but he doesn't tell her his actual plan, which is to attach a bunch of electrodes onto her, hypnotize her, and risk her life in a dumb experiment. The experiment involves sending her back to a past life, and so, doodly-doodly-doo, she wakes up in the Middle Ages, although it's a weirdly Elizabethan Middle Ages, whatever. The name of her past self is Helene, and she's in prison, about to be executed for being a witch. Thing is, she's not a witch, but there are a bunch of other witches around, most notably Livia, the witch who framed her, and Meg Maud, who looks an awful lot like the Wicked Witch of the West, but who is in fact going to try to save our hero. Let's see, who else is in this movie? There's a love interest named Pendragon, and bad witch Livia tries to get him to sell his soul to Satan in exchange for Helene's freedom. There's Satan, you've probably heard of him, and Livia has an imp who tries very, very hard to be some comic relief. And also trying very hard is Digger Smolkin, a gravedigger who believes that a witch has made him mad without any real evidence of madness. Anywho, they all run around from here to there, and I guess it's all very madcap, I guess. I don't know. But eventually, Quintus manages to go back in time through Diana's psychic link or something. And eventually, the plot is kind of explained to everybody, and now Diana/Helene needs to make a decision. She can let Helene die and resume being Diana, or she can save Helene and, woo Pendragon. And then, for some reason, I don't know why, they didn't really explain it very well, but it will be the end of Helene's future lives. In other words, Diana will never exist, nor will all the women she's been for the past several hundred years. It's kind of a weird theology. Anyway, she chooses to let Helene die, and she wakes up in the present as Diana, and Quintus forgot to come back with her, and so now he's stuck in the past, which, frankly, is still far too good a fate for him. Oh, and now Diana talks like a fancy person and not like a woman of the street in a 50s movie, and so I guess she decides not to be a sex worker anymore. Ugh, this movie. The end.
Meanwhile, on the Satellite of Love, we open with Mike reminiscing about temp jobs that he's had in the past. Well, it starts off as fun, reminiscing, but over the course of the sketch, Mike reveals that he's always been a bitter loner with a mean streak. Fun. After the break, we're back with the Observers, omnipotent beings who, in true hokey sci-fi fashion, talk about their great powers without ever really doing much. They decide to subject the SOL crew to standardized tests, and our heroes do poorly. Well, all except Tom, who insists his high score is merely because he tests well. This proves to be an upset in the Observer domain, as Tom's scores are higher than that of Bill Corbett's Observer, so the two Observers eye the little robot as his replacement. In segment 2, Tom's missing from the Satellite of Love. No worries, he's an observer now, holding his brain in a jar. Well, actually, it's just an olive. Well, anyway, and he's only doing that until the observers notice that he has no physical brain to hold, hence the olive, and is just down there to steal their silverware. A lengthy, and I do mean lengthy, Scooby-Doo-esque chase for the cutlery thief ensues. Segments 3 and 4 see Mike and the Bots interacting, or not, with characters from today's movie. Initially, it's Bridget Nelson as the evil witch Livia, who comes to taunt the SOL, but gets stuck in a series of random transformations. Afterwards, Mike and the Bots enjoy a series of cover songs from Gravedigger Smolkin, which is not dissimilar to the Cryptkeeper's Christmas album. In the final segment, Bobo gets some brain. Well, Bobo accidentally bites into the brain of Bill Corbett's Observer while helping himself to a midnight snack. Not much to say about that last sketch, despite the fact that it goes on for far too long. The end.
This is an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
This is an episode, yes.
This episode exists. It's very much from early season 8.
Yeah.
I think this is in my bottom 5 episodes right now.
It was filmed in color, unless you count the movie, and technically it was shot on tape.
Yep. And it shows.
Yeah. Jim Mallon is still Gypsy, so if you're counting down for when he gets replaced, it's like just a few more episodes.
Oh, that's good to look forward to, I guess. Kevin directed this one, and it seems like he's the only one having any fun.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the Entertainment Weekly review of the first few episodes of season 8, where they noted that it's like Tom seems to be doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah, if they'd gotten rid of everybody else, including Bobo, I'll add.
Yes.
And it was just Tom all the time, I might have enjoyed it more. I don't know.
Yes, Kevin is offering the best and worst of the episodes.
I'm bored with us being unhappy with season 8 episodes. and yet we are.
There's nothing much we could do about it. It's like I try so hard to look for the good in these things, but it's difficult. The only thing I can say is that I was about to say I enjoyed it more than the last one, but I'm not sure if that's true. Only in this sense. I do appreciate, I will say this, as weak as I think the episode and the riffs are, I do appreciate how bonkers the Undead is.
All right, well, tell me what you think of the Undead, because it's weird, and I have multiple feelings about it.
Yeah, well, that's just it. It's the weirdness that it leans into that I kind of love about it. It's like, okay, here's this drama about past lives, except it's not a drama. It's actually a medieval fantasy. Oh, P.S., it's kind of a horror movie. Satan shows up.
Kind of. He's not very scary.
No. He's not very menacing, despite the fact that, again, he taunts viewers at the very beginning of the episode while flames are coming at you. there's something so good-natured and silly about all the medieval stuff. And Gravedigger Smokin', like, I felt like I was watching an episode of a long-running TV show that had just gone really far off the rails. Like, we're finally in the Great Gazoo years when they introduced Satan and Livia and the Imp. We're in the Uncle Arthur years.
And these are like the best characters in some ways. We'll talk about the actors in a bit, I think, but I liked Smokin'.
Oh, I love Smokin'.
He was great. And yet also, like, Mike and the Bots hated him.
Yeah, which sort of takes a damper out of things. It's funny that this movie has like a lot of joy in it. And that's one of the reasons why I like it. I think that the performers are all really strong with what they have to do. And of course, depending on how fun the character is, that will really result in how much you like them. But everyone's doing their job pretty well. And there's an excitement to this that the professionalism of the previous movie does not have. There is a real life here for this kooky idea. And you really get the sense that what Roger Corman wanted to do was make a medieval fantasy, but he was stuck justifying it.
Right.
So that's why you have the other 35% in the movie, which is set in an office.
I believe from what little I've read about the making of the film that it actually went the other way around, that they were trying to cash in on the past life fad. And by the time they actually got around to filming the movie, that fad was basically over. So they tacked on a medieval story.
Yeah. And yet that's where all the joy comes from. That's all the fun.
All that weird quasi-cod Shakespearean writing that's going on.
And I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet this is the thing. It's like all the stuff that I'm enjoying about the movie is the stuff that Mike and the Bots are hating. And I hate to get all nitpicky. Mm-hmm. That's not how that's not good for anyone. But it really felt a lot of the time like they just weren't watching the movie very carefully.
No, otherwise they'd be able to pick up on the tone because the movie clearly has a sense of humor.
Sure. But even if they didn't find the humor terribly funny, and some of it certainly wasn't, they miss a few obvious things. Like early on, Quintus takes Diana to the Psychic Research Institute. And one of the first jokes from Mike and the Bots is about how the person who's working there is a psychiatrist. And it's like, you didn't read that sign, did you? And they've made dumb little mistakes like that. And it's fine. People make mistakes. That's not a reason to discredit anything. But there's been a lot of that in the last couple episodes, and it's making me feel sad.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, this is why, I've always maintained that despite a handful of good episodes, this is the low point of the show. Yeah.
The movie also, like I said in my summary, has a real bad take on sex workers.
You don't say.
Even for its time, it feels like a particularly nasty take on them. But
even for 57?
Even for 57, this idea that, is Quintus supposed to be our hero?
No, I really do think that Helene / Diana is our hero.
Yeah. She has to be, right? But the way that she's just being used like this and it's just casually being killed and everybody around her is yeah, it's fine. Mm-hmm. Or, the other psychic researcher guy is a little bit I don't know, this seems a bit unethical, but okay, you talked me into it.
It's I planned on staying at the office anyway, so.
Yeah, might as well have something to do. Let's just see where this goes. Oh, God.
Now, if we were going by characters we wanted to see more of, I would say the Gravedigger Smokin' is our lead, but
that's true.
Yeah, but other than that, it's there's this is a doozy in that it's trying to create a podcast episode out of this.
Yeah, that is the other thing. I kept watching this being I have nothing to talk about. This is giving me nothing. They're not being interesting enough in terms of what they're talking about to give us any ideas for what to bounce off of. So, listeners, we're going to do our best here.
It's going to be 14 minutes long this time.
But let's stop whining about the movie because that's kind of boring. And let's talk about something else.
To live like the Corman. To laugh, to love.
We've talked about Roger Corman a couple times on this show. And by we, I mean mostly you. Mm-hmm. Because you're the person who knows about this sort of thing. But he's gifted us with this movie that has not a lot of things to talk about nope. it. So do you have any other Roger Corman stories to regale us with that maybe will take up about 30 minutes?
Well, we'll see about that. I guess a few things to just kind of get off like about this movie out of the way. It was co-written by Charles Griffith, and that's kind of neat because Griffith wrote the original Little Shop of Horrors, and I believe he also wrote It Conquered the World and Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
So he's a long-standing Corman companion and
Enabler. I think we call them enablers.
Enablers. Yes. So it was good to see his name in the credits, and I think that shows just what kind of like loopy imagination that Corman is attracted to, and kind of like keeping that Roger Corman tongue-in-cheek spirit in place is again a script by him. There is something super familiar, actually, that I had found out while trolling the IMDb, which is the dinky little bat puppets.
Yes.
That Livia and her imp transform into.
They were amazing special effects.
Yes. Well, apparently Roger Corman really thought so. They must have had a special place in his heart, or at the very least his wallet, because they're leftover props from It Conquered the World.
Oh, excellent. Those little bats that got onto people's necks to make them be controlled by the interstellar cucumber.
Yes, apparently they're the exact same puppets.
Lovely.
So, and of course, with Roger Corman, we do have, there's two things that kind of like make the movie much more impressive. One is that like the sets are, I believe, just a reconfigured supermarket. Like they just had an abandoned supermarket, so it's like, dress it up, make it look medieval.
Well, that explains all the aisles in the middle of a medieval forest.
That explains why there's a produce section next to the guillotine. And also true to like Corman tradition is like this movie was shot pretty quickly. How many days do you think they spent? How many months? How many weeks? How long do you think they spent on this one?
It's definitely days. This reeked of not taking a week. I'm going to say 3 days.
6 days.
6? Oh, they lingered.
Almost a week. Unheard of in Roger Corman productions.
I guess they did have to do the now time stuff and the historic stuff.
Yeah, so they needed at least 2 sets. Because they're definitely running by the same patch of woods all the time.
It was a lot like watching Plan 9, I'm not going to lie.
But what's interesting is that like this kind of is what I would say is a bad first draft of like Roger Corman's later Poe movies. Where Richard Matheson, the great writer, would script I believe it's The Mask of the Red Death. Because he also did Fall of House of Usher as well. And Mask of the Red Death is like everything that Corman's trying to do here, but like a million times more successful. Vincent Price is the lead, so it's good.
Well, that is definitely going to be more successful, yes.
Take that, Quintus. And you've got essentially it's filmed in vivid color. There's kind of some trippy sequences in it as well, influenced by Corman's awareness of the 60s as well as his own experimentation with LSD.
Hello.
Which would be super fun. Oh yeah, I believe I mentioned that before, is that Roger Corman got a script for a movie called The Trip about a film director who decides to take an acid trip for the first time, and Roger Corman knew that in order to direct that movie he needed to take an acid trip for the first time. He's a wild man.
I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article for The Mask of the Red Death, and I see that also Jane Asher is in it.
That's right.
The girlfriend of Paul McCartney at the time. I wonder if he was ever on set.
That Lady Madonna is actually loosely about The Mask of the Red Death.
I mostly am trying to imagine Paul McCartney and Vincent Price hanging out together. That seems like it would go a little something like this.
Feels like a Lost Muppets episode.
What were we talking about?
Just Roger Corman.
Oh yeah, Roger Corman. He's made movies.
He's made lots of movies and seldom, if ever, lost a dime. And that's what's most impressive about him, is that he keeps churning them out and the people love him.
I agree that a better version of this movie could easily exist. And that Corman pumps out enough movies that one day he was going to get around to doing it.
I do think that there's a huge improvement between Corman's 50s work and his later work in the 60s. You can see the difference that the decade made for him.
Well, you know what else is in this movie? actors.
Yes, people who can read their lines and interact with others.
Now, we usually like to call this segment Familiar Faces, and I guess that kind of fits this time, but they're not going to be that familiar, some of them.
No, although one of them, Dick Miller, was so familiar that he got his own documentary that's called That Guy, Dick Miller. Dick Miller is one of those that guy actors who shows up in everything, and he, again, owes it all to Corman. One of his first appearances in anything is playing an army guy in It Conquered the World.
Oh, all right.
So he's super briefly in this as a leper, but he's also very briefly in that as well.
Yeah, he's in this film for a hot second. But I guess that is more screen time than he probably got in It Conquered the World. I don't know. We'd have to compare.
That's true. It's hard to say. I think he has a showier role in that the camera shows his face more in his few seconds here, as opposed to his few seconds in It Conquered the World.
Right. All right. So what else has he been in?
Well, he's been in a ton of stuff. Mostly, he worked with Roger Corman early on, but he was showing up in TV. Like, he shows up in an episode of Dragnet, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always, like, reliably getting work from Corman, but that also made other filmmakers who went through the Corman studio, the whole Corman process, and graduated from Corman University, they all warmed up to him, which is why Joe Dante kept putting him in movies.
Ah, yes. MST3K, fan of the show.
This goes all the way up to Dante's last full-length movie, Burying the Ex, has an old cop role for none other than Dick Miller, but I think audiences will know him best from his appearances in Gremlins and the far superior Gremlins 2: The New Batch as Murray Futterman. He's one of the Futtermans.
Oh, I thought I had seen Gremlins, but that doesn't sound familiar.
Oh yeah, he's the guy who was convinced that there were gremlins in WW2, and sure enough, gremlins show up in a tractor and bulldoze through his house.
Oh, all right.
And that's what happens in Gremlins 1, but in Gremlins 2, he happens to be visiting New York, and sure enough, so are the gremlins. He's also in Terminator, but he's basically in every Joe Dante movie. That's what people would know him from, I think, best.
All right. Dick Miller, we salute you.
Yes, he's a great actor. He's a craggy-faced actor. He's super fun to watch. He's just very good at being weary. I sometimes joke that he was the poor man's Harry Dean Stanton because they bore a superficial similarity in the 80s.
Then you found out how much Harry Dean Stanton costs, and well...
Hey, you can get that for cheap. But most crucially, is that he has a very strong supporting role in the Tales from the Crypt film, Demon Knight.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yeah, so we got to keep that Crypt connection going.
Yep. The Cryptkeeper is sort of like the undead Donald Pleasance.
Mm-hmm. It's great to see him when you see him.
Also in this film is somebody who gets mentioned in a lot of riffs in MST3K history, but I think this is the first time he's been in a film. Billy Barty.
Yeah. Billy Barty is, again, like, I know that, like, he's got quite an impressive array of credits. Like, that guy, Dick Miller, to get that guy's status, was in 184 films. How many do you think Billy Barty was in?
He was in plenty, I think.
Yeah, more than enough. He surpasses Dick Miller. He's in 211 credited appearances on IMDb.
Hachi-machi. Is that all films or is that also TV? Because I know he did a lot of guest appearances.
That'll include television, yeah.
Oh, okay, yes. Yeah, no, he was somebody you would bring in for a gag.
It was like, who's going to show up next at this haunted house? Billy Barty. And sure enough, he comes in and the audience roars.
Yeah, everybody loves a Billy Barty. I don't know if I've actually seen much Billy Barty stuff.
Well, you've seen UHF, haven't you?
I have seen UHF, although it was a long time ago.
Yeah, same here. It's been a while since I last watched UHF.
And I know I've seen a few other things he was in as I was looking stuff up. In fact, he was in a movie that I saw not terribly long ago. He was in Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, I forgot.
The 1935 Bride of Frankenstein. His scene was mostly cut, but there's a scene early on, not from the book, the scene early on where this mad scientist type person has a lot of little homunculi, little tiny shrunk down people under glass jars, under cloches. Mm-hmm. And one of those was Billy Barty as a baby in a high chair or something. He got cut, but he is still visible in a few of the scenes. So...
I didn't know that was him. Oh, yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I remember Billy Barty best from a movie from my childhood in that when it came time to make He-Man into a live-action movie, they couldn't get Orko. He was too expensive.
So they had him be Orko?
They basically had Billy Barty playing a tiny little character who was Orko with the serial numbers filed off.
Right.
President's Choice
they had
Orko.
the rights to Orko, surely.
It's like, we can't afford a wire for Billy Barty, so he's not Orko.
He was also in the Ralph Bakshi version of The Lord of the Rings as Bilbo and Samwise, but then rotoscoped.
Is he doing the voice?
He's doing the movement. He's rotoscoped.
Okay, but they have voice actors doing
No, somebody else is doing the voice, I believe.
Oh, okay.
He's done a lot of voice work, of course.
Yeah, because he's got a great voice.
Sure, although it's not in this film.
No, it's not, sadly. Though he does some great miming.
What did you think of his performance here?
Honestly, I thought he was really, he was perfect to play an imp. He was totally jovial, and, all he has to do is kind of laugh and grimace. But he does that well, and it's it's hard to take your eyes off of Billy Barty. He's got a lot of charisma.
That's true. I don't know. I think he did the job he was asked to do.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't very well captured. Let's put it that way.
Oh.
I didn't find it particularly amusing. I found it really try hard, but I don't really blame him for that. I blame other maybe directorial or editorial or script choices.
Oh no, those all come down to Roger Corman.
Oh dear. Oh dear. But yeah, Billy Barty, interesting person. He also, the same year that The Undead came out, he founded a group called Little People of America as an organization to help people with dwarfism.
Oh.
And he gathered a bunch of people together, and that organization is still going strong today.
Oh, that's great.
I believe. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that is still extant, and I believe it's still considered a good thing. I am not that au fait with that community, but yeah, he did a lot of good work, as far as I know, doing activism for that community.
No, that's great. That's great. I had no idea.
Also in this film, we've got Allison Hayes as Olivia, the big bad witch.
Yes, and again, with the other performances, I would say she's great. I think everybody here is really well cast.
I think she did a pretty good job. Again, it could have been tightened up somehow, but I don't blame her for it. I think she did a perfectly fine job. She was in, of course, a bunch of other movies, perhaps most notably as the 50-Foot Woman in Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, which is a movie that I keep forgetting was never mistied.
No, and yet you would think it's ripe for it, and they already did both amazing colossal men, but maybe they felt that they were tired out at that point.
Maybe. You've seen Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, I assume?
Actually, no, I only know the trailer.
Oh, well,
I only know it as a coming attraction. I did see a remake of it that came out on cable in the 90s, which I would not recommend.
I mostly know this movie for its amazing poster.
Oh, yes, that is terrific.
That is absolutely what that poster needed to be.
Link in the show notes.
Well, I guess we can't talk about if she's any good in that then.
Maybe next time. Allison Hayes, come on the show again somehow.
So I guess we should move on to another person, Bruno Visoda.
Yes, and wasn't he in Daddy-O?
He wasn't in Daddy-O.
Oh, he's not?
He's in Attack of the Giant Leeches and The Wasp Woman and The Wild World of Batwoman.
Oh, then why would I associate him with Daddy-O?
Dick Contino is the one who's in Daddy-O, isn't it?
Oh, yes, that's who it is. I always get those two confused.
Fair enough. But yeah, so I guess you can go back to our episode on The Wild World of Batwoman for all of our Bruno Visoda gossip. But that's a face you might remember.
Yes, and I guess that leaves us with one final face.
That's worth mentioning anyways.
Yes, and indeed the highlight of the movie, playing Gravedigger Smolkin, none other than Mel Wells.
Mel Wells, he was delightful in this.
Yes, I'd say that Mel did quite well.
And he's been in a bunch of other Roger Corman films, as so many Roger Corman actors are. He was in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes, he was in Little Shop of Horrors, and I believe, isn't he the lead of Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2?
I believe he is. He's the wizard of the Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2, who is not the young ward.
Yes, although it'd be incredible if he lost the weight and de-aged himself in order to get that role. And you know what? Because we can't confirm it because we're too lazy to check, I choose to believe that Mel Wells put in the time and effort to do so.
Yeah, I've already forgotten that episode, I'm afraid. I need to go back to it, I guess.
It's all a blur, listeners. It's all a blur to us.
There was some 80s hair and some 80s filming and I think some 80s music. And I don't remember him being as good in that as he is in this. So maybe cut off your Mel Wells diet around the mid-60s. I'm not sure.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. But you know what? One glance at Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2 suggests that maybe that's the correct choice.
Hey everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time for the Shallow 13. Are there really 13 more things to say about this episode, The Undead? Well, let's see. Go, Adam, go.
Let's go straight into the riffing. Upon seeing the title card for the film, Tom gets wistful and recalls,
I saw the Undead at Unalpine Unvalley.
The Grateful Dead, known as the Dead to fans, did indeed play the Alpine Valley Music Theater. 20 times, in fact.
And that's the sort of local reference we expect from everybody's favorite Cowtown puppet show. No, not the Dead, man. The Alpine Valley Music Theater. While obviously closed now due to, everything, the Alpine Valley Music Theater opened in 1977 in East Troy, Wisconsin, and has hosted a number of major touring acts like Coldplay and more.
Let's keep up with the Midwest references. Mike notes something a little heartrending about the actors' on-screen credits.
Well, it's kind of ironic because all these people work at Embers now.
Ricky's Embers was a chain of restaurants based in Minnesota, serving pies, pancakes, burgers, and whatnot. Though no longer as plentiful as they once were, at least one Embers survives in its natural habitat, East Fridley, Minnesota.
And as we enter the American Institute of Psychical Research, Crow quips,
Come on into my meat freezer. I'd like to show you my research on beefalo.
Beefalo, terrifying hybrid creatures, part bison, part moo cow, I'm being told, are delicious. Well, according to a December 26, 1982 article on beefalo entitled, Beefalo Might Be the Meat of the Future, it is. In fact, it's praised for having double the protein as regular beef, and, let's be frank, it's a lot more fun to say, Beefalo!
When the elder doctor advises Diana to take it easy, Tom adds,
Take it easy, Diana.
Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you
Are
crazy.
you subject to fainting spells?
Eagle-eared listeners will note that this is the chorus of Take It Easy by the Eagles, and double eagle-eared listeners will know that this same song was referenced in Red Zone Cuba with the line,
Running down the road, trying to loosen my load. I got Coleman Francis on my mind.
When the hypnotized Diana starts to respond to Quintus en français, Tom blurts out,
Tish, that's French.
That's the catchphrase of the creepy and kooky Gomez Adams, who'd be whipped into an erotic frenzy whenever his beloved Morticia spoke French in the Addams Family TV series and movies.
As Diana squirms in her chair as she undergoes hypnosis, Tom quips,
It's must-see TV night. I have to get home.
For younger listeners, there was a time when TV was not streaming on demand and networks programmed their shows to air but a single episode on one night of the week. NBC used this phrase in marketing its Thursday night programming in 1982, initially promoting the comedy of Cheers and the drama of Hill Street Blues. By the time this episode aired, Must See Thursday was promoting the comedy of Seinfeld and the drama of ER.
As Helene comes on to her jailer, Crow gruffly asserts that
This is harassment and I don't have to take it.
that phrase comes from a major TV ad campaign against sexual harassment in the 90s, in which a woman is depicted as shrinking in size when confronted with her leering boss, before returning to her normal height to deliver that iconic line. Link in the show notes if you want to watch it. The special effects are a bit better than the ones in today's episode.
Mike dubs Helene's balding jailer as Sir Ray Nitschke. Ray Nitschke was the football equivalent of a heel as linebacker for the Green Bay Packers. Though feared for his fury on the field, Nitschke, like many actors and wrestlers who play heels, was apparently a nice guy off duty.
Oh, hey, early on, when they're taking the IQ test, Tom starts going on about how a passage on the test is obviously from Terence's Phormio. Terence was a Roman African playwright from around 170 BCE, and he wrote plays, he wrote comedies. His most quoted line? Homo sum humani nihila me alienum puto. I am human, and so nothing human is foreign to me. Which, I don't know, I actually kind of find that line a bit dubious, but whatever.
After Helene's beheading, we get a shot of the sun, and Tom sings,
Ontario.
some classic CanCon here. A Place to Stand, A Place to Grow was written for the Ontario Pavilion at Expo 67 in Montreal. It was used in a short film called A Place to Stand that showed off the beauty of Ontario.
Scenic shots of the province where this podcast is made were shown in a series of panels within the main movie frame, up to 15 little boxes at a time. This was a pioneering effect back then, and it was soon adopted for use in Norman Jewison's 1968 film The Thomas Crown Affair, and about 400 months later in the TV show 24.
The Undead was a B-movie double feature released by American International Pictures, alongside Voodoo Woman. There's even less to that one than The Undead, but it does star Mike Connors, best known to Misty's when he was credited as Touch Connors for Roger Corman's Swamp Diamonds, riffed in Season 5.
And that's time!
Now, Chris, how did you like that Gravedigger?
We've mentioned them many times, and I quite enjoyed him.
Yeah. Now, that Gravedigger, well, he's a little bit quippy, would you say? He's got a way with words.
He sure does like to replace words in popular folk songs with grave or rat or whatnot.
And I think that he bears a certain similarity to a beloved Cryptkeeper. This Gravedigger and Cryptkeeper, why they're cut of the same cloth.
I mean, one of them is significantly paunchier than the other, but I think I know where you're going with this, and I'm okay with it, so I'll allow it.
Yeah, they're each other's before and after pictures, but I won't say which one.
All right, does that mean we're playing a game?
Yes, we're playing another game of
Cryptkeeper. Or not.
My body is ready.
Okay. To go over the rules just briefly for those of us who just need some catching up, Cryptkeeper or Not is where I choose several scenarios that are being performed by the Cryptkeeper, two of which are real and are from the HBO series Tales from the Crypt, but one I made up, and it is up for Chris to deduce which one is which.
Okay. I got it right last time.
Yes, I know, and that was the first time, I believe.
I think so.
Okay, well, this is exciting stuff. Can the hot streak continue?
I'm going to go double or nothing, Alex.
Okay. All right, so our first scenario is this. The Cryptkeeper is performing stand-up comedy. He's there, brick wall and everything. He's wearing a purple jacket, and he's got his hair in a ponytail. So he looks like late period George Carlin.
Sure.
All right. And he taps the microphone, and he goes, "How about that Ernest Hemingway? Always shooting his mouth off."
What? Okay, that's a little dark for the kids, even for the Cryptkeeper.
Now, the audience doesn't react because they are, in fact, just a bunch of unresponsive skeletons. So the Cryptkeeper takes out a big cartoonish bomb with a lit fuse and throws it into the audience, blowing all the skeletons up. "Now that's what I call bombing," says the Cryptkeeper.
Oh man, Fozzie Bear wishes he had this material.
Now, keeping up with the performance theme, the Cryptkeeper greets the audience. He's sitting down in the crypt, and behind him is a TV screen. He's holding a remote control. "Hello, boils and ghouls. Your old pal, the Cryptkeeper, is carrying on a great tradition, hacting. I thought I'd broaden my horizons and start performing on the big screen."
On the big scream?
Yes, the big screen.
Okay.
"Care to watch a few films with me?" So the Cryptkeeper clicks on the remote control, and the TV starts playing a scene from Say Anything.
What? Okay, so they licensed a clip from Say Anything for this bit.
Well, remember, it was Hollywood's top producers who made Tales from the Crypt, so they got a lot of big guests. Whoopi Goldberg, Arnold Schwarzenegger. All right. First up is my role in Slay Anything. On the television, the Cryptkeeper is holding up a boombox.
Oh, I see.
But instead of Peter Gabriel music, it's just playing blood-curdling screams. Or perhaps the Cryptkeeper clicks the remote control again. "Perhaps you liked my tour de fierce performance in Back to the Butcher." Now we cut to Marty McFly is standing there, but in place of Biff is the Cryptkeeper dressed as Biff. And he says, "Hello, McDie, anyone home?" And the Cryptkeeper tries to knock on Marty McFly's head, but his rotting hand just falls off. The TV screen goes blank, and we cut back to the Cryptkeeper. What's that? You didn't see me in those Grossian pictures? Just my luck. Always on the cutting room floor.
Wow, they really splashed out for that one. Several different sets, several different scenarios. All right. You think they could have just done a Back to the Future parody and called it a day?
Nope. And again, when the Tales for the Crypt wheels were all on track, they would spare no expense. All right. And lastly, continuing the performance theme, the Cryptkeeper is holding up a ventriloquist dummy. He goes, watch this, kiddies. You won't see my lips move. You know why? I don't have any. Well, hello, Dickie. Would you like me to tell you a tale from the crypt? The puppet responds, no thanks, Death Breath. Ooh. The Cryptkeeper, enraged, says, then how about sitting a little closer to the fire? And the Cryptkeeper throws the puppet into a nearby fireplace.
Okay.
Now, which of these is the Cryptkeeper and which is not? To recap, we have the Cryptkeeper performing stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Cryptkeeper showing off all the scenes that he was cut from in movies.
Right.
And we have the Cryptkeeper practicing ventriloquism, which is a nice little meta joke, as the Cryptkeeper was himself a puppet.
That's true. That's true. The one that I think is the most likely to be a real Cryptkeeper bit is the last one, the ventriloquist one. That sounds just right. That sounds spot on, which, of course, maybe I should be suspicious of. Then we have the other two, though, and ooh, it's tough because, all right, here's what I'm weighing in my mind. We've got, on the one hand, we've got a really elaborate sequence with a lot of different sets and so forth. And on the other hand, we've got that Hemingway joke, which really comes out of nowhere if you're just sitting down to watch Tales from the Crypt. It requires a certain amount of trust in your audience that, I don't know, my previous rounds of Cryptkeeper or not did not really inspire me to think that they went that deep in that sort of cultured MST3K riffing style way. So I think I'm going to say that the TV show one is the real one, that it was the end of a season and they wanted to shove all their best ideas together, or they had a bunch of half-formed ideas and made a frame tale around it. And that the stand-up comedy one is actually a bit you recycled from your own stand-up comedy career.
Oh, I wish I had jokes that good. Chris, I'm afraid the hot streak is over.
Oh, no. Before it barely began.
As I indeed made up the one about the Cryptkeeper auditioning.
Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. That could have been beautiful.
That's it. The Cryptkeeper stand-up one, and indeed the ventriloquist dummy ones, they do stand out as some of the highlights of Tales from the Crypt.
We didn't have a lot to talk about this episode, so I put a shout out to some of our listeners to ask them if they had any questions for a little peek behind the curtain, as they say. And we got a few questions, and I thought we'd spend a few minutes just talking about that right now. And maybe that will make this to be about an hour-long show, which is what we aim for. We want you to get your money's worth. We have nothing to say about this episode.
Yes, Chris and I have been doing that stretch it out gesture to each other.
So our first question comes from... So we got a few questions from our good buddy Sean, who asks, do you ever watch the episodes together?
We did that once.
We did do that once. Was it Alien from LA?
No, it was, it was one of the best episodes of season 8 and one of the highlights of MST3K. Overdraw at the Memory Bank.
Oh, right. Oh, that was really good.
Yeah.
And then you made me watch that ninja movie.
Yes, which was also great.
It was. It was great as well. Yeah, we did watch the episode together. We were doing a bit of recording in the same room for a while there. And then something happened and we haven't done it for a little while. I don't know why.
That's crazy. I don't know. I'm sure the rest of the world has been totally normal and it's just been us.
So weird. So weird. But yeah, we have another question, which is somebody asked whether we write bits of the show in advance, and in particular the Shallow 13.
Yes, none of that is improvised.
Yeah. I was a little surprised to get that question a while back, but, there's no bad questions.
Only bad answers.
Only bad answers. Yes. So, yeah, we do. We write the summaries in advance, and we write the Shallow 13 in advance, and, of course, we write a little outline for the topics we want to cover. And we may or may not give each other a lot of information about what we plan to talk about, depending on what we think will make the show go better. But yeah, no, those are written in advance, partially because we want to switch from this conversational back and forth ad lib format to something a little bit more formal, just to shake it up a bit about 40 minutes into the show.
Not to mention, it's like, I don't think I could come up off the top of my head every time for a brand new Cryptkeeper or not. I have to write the new things in advance.
We've got a question about how do you select which episodes to do?
Oh, that's entirely randomized. Although I will say it's like there's always an eye on like eras that we haven't, or even not even eras, but seasons that we haven't looked at recently. It's like, oh, we haven't touched season 5 in a while. We should do one of those, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we just did the Coleman Francis trilogy, which is all Mike, and now we're doing the season 8 trilogy, which is going to be all Mike, and therefore
a trilogy of 4.
A trilogy of 4, of which we're only doing 3. Because we have a few holidays that we do, right? And so before long, it will be time for Labor Day. And so we're going to be doing our Hercules movie. So some of these things are just baked in. But sometimes it's just whatever we feel like. Sometimes there's some reason to do a thing because it's an anniversary or something. Otherwise, it's just random. And there are some ones that we are saving for special occasions. So there are some episodes that people have asked us, can we do this soon? And it's like, actually, no, we have a plan for that episode. It will come out at a very specific moment. And that moment is not going to be for a while. So we apologize, but we are planning on doing all of them. So stick around for a few more years and you'll get to hear your favorite episode.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, that we're committed to the show and that we've not just done the episodes, but we've done the episodes that were remade from KTMA. We've done both of those each time.
We're going to do so many Gameras, many Gameras yet to come.
Like it's been 6 of those. And I think we've run out of things to say about flying turtles, but we've got 4 more left. So we'll figure it out. Expect a really dry, shallow 13 for those next 4 Gamuaries.
We've got a question. What's up with Theme Squad? How do they make little ditties that capture the spirit of the episode so well?
Magic.
It's all magic, yeah. We just send the draft version of the episode off to the Theme Squad elves, and they just get into their little recording studios and hunker down for a week, and then they spit back out the final minute of music.
Chris has some singing rodents that he keeps.
Yeah, they didn't get a lot of work after the movie Babe, and so they've just found a little place in my home and in my heart. Let's see, is there anything else? We got a question, which is more of a comment than a question, but I will translate part of it into a question, which is to say, when will we get another cameo from Beth?
Good question. When Beth is free. Beth is quite busy right now, as she did just have another child.
And of course, stuff is happening in the world.
Yep, there's that too, which adds to the busyness. It's not like she had a sudden glut of free time as a result.
So yeah, I'm sure Beth will come back when she's good and ready. She is, of course, always welcome here. And she was on an episode of Take Your Pick recently, so that was great.
Yeah.
So go check that out if you need a little Beth action, although she is talking about books in that episode, not about MST3K episodes. When we do a Take Your Pick about the greatest MST3K episodes ever, you can be sure she'll be there.
Unless she's very busy, which is also very possible.
All right, I think that is the contractual amount of time we need to fill in order to feel good about ourselves for a few brief, blissful seconds. So thank you for your questions, and thank you for listening.
And thanks for being you. So I guess we have time for just one more thing.
We sure do.
All right, then I have got one more thing for you, although it's more related to the Shallow 13 than the episode. You had mentioned the Thomas Crown affair in the Shallow 13.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's kind of a neat tie to that because there's a moment when Quintus hypnotizes Diana, and Tom is inspired to sing, like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel.
Yes.
And that song is The Windmills of Your Mind.
Mm-hmm.
And although that was originally composed by a French composer named Michel Legrand, basically the song with English lyrics debuted in the 1968 film The Thomas Crown Affair.
Oh.
Yeah. Which won the Best Original Song for that year's Academy Awards.
Huh. I mean, it's a fun little song.
Oh, yeah.
They sing it often in the riffing here. And I don't know anything about the Thomas Crown Affair. What is that movie about?
I don't know. I had a chance to see the remake and I turned it down, so I haven't seen either version.
It's a heist film.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that would make sense why you'd use lots of little cameras then. Oh, it's got Steve McQueen as Thomas Crown.
Mm-hmm. And I think the remake has Pierce Brosnan, which does not sound near as good.
No. Oh, well. All right. Well, yeah. So, like a circle in a circle, this has all come full circle. Something like that. I'm very tired. We haven't had a lot to say this episode.
No.
Let's move on.
Yeah, stretching it out. If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you have any information about Universal's failed Dark Universe, or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our website is itsjustashow.com, and we're on Twitter at itisjustashow. We'd love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you. For as little as $1 an episode, you can help us research and record this show, and you can listen to all our superfan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/76.
I guess we have another one of these to do next, huh?
Yes, we now currently we're experiencing the terror from the year 2020.
Yes. There can't be worse. There can't be worse.
Oh, imagine, Chris. Just imagine what it would be like. Why, less than 3 centuries from now.
A little more than 3 centuries from now.
Never mind. I'm very tired.
Less than 3 millennia from now.
Yes, there we go.
So we're doing Terror from the Year 5000, which is the next movie in the series, 807. Yes, that is what we will be doing. I am super curious to find out whether Terror from the Year 5000 seems like Pleasure Dome from the year 5000 compared to the Terror from the year 2020.
Perhaps it'll be a perfect fit for Mystery Science Theater 3000.
There you go. There you go.
Again, fingers crossed. Maybe this will be a really good episode. That's what I'm hoping for. No one ever hopes for a dud. No one ever wants a dud.
Hey, you know who's in this movie?
No. I don't know nothing about this movie.
Remember Skydivers?
Oh my God. Dare I hope for more Coleman Francis?
Well, remember how Bad Girl Susie seduces a chemist in order to get $2 worth of acid?
So it's the same jar of acid?
It's the same jar of acid who played the chemist, yes.
Okay, well, with Coleman Francis as your bona fides, this is bound to be great.
Yay. But until next time.
That gravedigger must have put on a magic mask because he is smoking.
Why didn't they call it They Live? Take it away, Theme Squad.
No thanks, Death Breath.